Yo, what's up with the viewers of the tube? Tyler here of Chico Crypto, coming to you guys with not my regular content, but an interview I've been wanting to do for a really long time. Today I have the co-founder of Grid Singularity and the chairman of the Energy Web Foundation, Ed Hess, as well as the CEO of the Energy Web Foundation, Jesse Morris. Thank you guys for being here. I can't wait to get to the questions. First, I want to ask, how's your day going?
Going good here in California. Thanks for having us.
Oh, no problem. How about yours, Ed?
Weather as usual in Berlin. It's gray.
Gray.
All good.
All good, yes. So I'm sure many of the viewers know what Energy Web is, but for any new viewers, my first question is, give me a 90-second elevator pitch of what Energy Web is.
I'm happy to start with that one. So for the newcomers, Energy Web is a project and an ecosystem of companies focused on using Web3 technologies and the Energy Web token to accelerate the energy transition. Now, for the crypto folks out there, what is the energy transition? Basically, as folks probably have seen, we're in the midst of the biggest transition of the energy system ever in history, because we're moving from one where we have a small number of centralized power plants that are basically powering the grid to a new decentralized distributed system where millions of different kinds of clean energy assets are going to be balancing the grid. We are focused on that transition by working with some of the world's biggest energy companies to overlay our technology stack, the Energy Web decentralized operating system, onto that system to basically help these utilities thrive in a totally renewable environment. So that's our focus. That's our ecosystem. We're one of the only Web3 organizations and communities focused on helping big businesses adopt actual public blockchain technology.
So basically, you're trying to help, the big business as well as the consumer, in this new energy transition.
Definitely. I mean, if our vision becomes reality, basically anyone in the world will be able to participate in energy markets where they sit and where they live, and they'll be able to do so using public blockchain technology behind the scenes that benefits both businesses and the end users.
Oh, well, that's amazing. I can't wait. So my next question is, this had to have been in development for some time, So how long has Energy Web been in development, and when was it first conceived?
Oh, this is a long story where I can help. So we actually started research in 2014, and actually beginning of 2014. That was actually right after the Ethereum team was Ethereum founding team. They came together after I think Miami, and then they came to Vienna. I organized a little conference there where Vitalik came with Gav and a few others. And after the first meeting that we had, Gav and Aaron joined us on several researches that we did. So we did a lot of workshops around the whole globe where I kind of was teaching, showing kind of how the energy market works right now, which is fairly simple. It's a very monopolistic market. And the very simple rules. It's still very complicated, a lot of regulation, and which gets only more and more and more, not less. And from 2014 until launch of Ethereum in 2015, we had, I think, over 20 business models, potential business models. Because once you realize how blockchain works and you look at energy markets, you feel like a hammer and everything looks like a nail. And then at the end, Ethereum launched, and looking at all those concepts we had then on the table, it was clear none of this is going to work in the next few years because everything was too groundbreaking. There were so many rules and regulations in place that I would have, we knew we were way too far ahead, of the market, and this led us to a strategy. Where we said, okay, first we have to educate people, we have to bring people together, we have to make a consortium. And so we incorporated, Gav incorporated Parity, we incorporated Grid Singularity. And then in 2016, We presented at the MIT the first concept of this decentralized operating system, and it wasn't named Energy Web at that time. And it took us a few months to find because we couldn't do it alone. We came purely from the tech side, and so we were looking for a really strong partner, and that's how we found Rocky Mountain Institute, because there was a blog that Validator posted at that time, and I read the blog about renewables and kind of the development, and it resonated very much with our vision. And then and that's how we met in San Francisco. It took another 3 months, to come up with the concept, and the division of work was quite clear, and so the learning curve was very steep at Rocky Mountain Institute site, and Jesse was actually part, together with Hervé at that time. So it was actually Jesse, Hervé, and me and Anna that incorporated the foundation and so forth. And in 2017, then we founded the foundation, and we basically said, okay, we made the bet, if we can get the 10 largest companies in the world to join this, then we do it. Otherwise, we fail. And Jesse was a machine there. So in the first 3 months, we got the largest companies joining us after Event Horizon. And then by the end of the year, by the end of 2017, 80, I don't know, Jesse, how many do you have now?
Well over 100. Yeah, I think it grew from like 10 to 30, and then it's a strong linear growth curve of these businesses, and each business again representing anywhere from tens of millions to hundreds of millions of consumers underneath them. And my memory of that story, Ed, was incredibly fun. Here's, I'm an energy and climate guy. My whole life in the 2010s was sitting with these big utilities, trying to help them see how they could use software to make money on renewables and energy efficiency and stuff. And what became really clear in my work was that these utilities are really not very good at making software or digital solutions. And then, as I was doing that work, I meet this crazy guy named Ed that's coming in and telling me about Ether. I think, Ed, you probably don't remember this. I think ETH was at like $2 to $4 when we first met. It was incredibly low. And you said, Jesse, I'll never forget it. We were eating lunch somewhere in Colorado, and you said, come on, let me help you with this. Trust me, this is going to go crazy. And then I didn't, of course. And then I think Ed went on a trip, and that was one of the first ETH bull runs. So for me, it was wild to be doing all this enterprise stuff, and then to meet Ed, who introduced blockchain and all these Web3 technologies to me. And the link was forever made, at least in my mind, about how we were going to make this happen. Even though it's taken a while, I mean, that was when the light bulb went off for me.
Wow. Well, I got a similar story with Ed. Ed, actually told me about Kusama. And yeah, but I listened. No. But it sounds like Gavin Wood, he has been involved with this for a while now, which we're going to get into in a second with one of our next questions. But first, I want to talk about something that just dropped with you guys. You had a Medium post as well as the, initial version of the Energy Web Validator dashboard. So what is it doing right now? And what are some features that will be included with it in the future?
Yeah. So really excited about this. I mean, with the Energy Web chain as it stands today, it's this proof of authority blockchain, right? And what proof of authority means in our setup is that we get big trusted energy companies to basically stake their brand and run validator nodes on this global decentralized network. The trick with that is the public didn't really have a lot of visibility into like who these companies are. How many tokens are they holding? How are they behaving with those tokens? What are they building on the network? Are their nodes healthy? That kind of stuff. So what we've done with this dashboard, and you can go check it out right now, it shows all of that information I just described and much more. So where the validators are, different balances of tokens. Soon it's going to be populated, literally showing what they have built on the network so people can connect the dots there.
Nice.
So to me, it's just like unparalleled level of transparency of what these different companies are doing. And then this is just for the existing Energy Web chain. I know we'll talk about it a little bit later today, but as we move to a slightly different blockchain architecture, we can actually repurpose this tool. So whatever blockchains we end up using in the Energy Web ecosystem, we can actually use this dashboard to bring a lot more transparency in terms of the companies that are helping to power all of this stuff.
Awesome.
Tyler, maybe just to chip in here.
Yeah.
There is really something, that is completely underrated, what's happening here. And so, we have been witnessing the formation of all those financial consortia, R3CV and so forth, a lot of banks that maybe started consortium, I don't know when it was 16 or 15.
Yeah.
And, so we saw the formation of the first kind of corporate consortia around this technology, and we have been talking also to many of those. And there was one pattern that evolved, which was the pattern of closed permission blockchains, and where basically there was no necessity for a token if it's closed and permissioned. And for us, it was imperative from the beginning, that we actually make it publicly accessible network. And if you have a publicly accessible computer, you need the token, which is there for managing the bandwidth. So at that time, that was groundbreaking. And finally, it's still groundbreaking because it's still the only, if you look at this dashboard right now, it's the only chain out there where you see which companies are validating, corporates are validating, startups, and so forth. And so this level of transparency, or this hybrid model that we started at that time, public access to anyone, and but run by energy market participants, is still very unique. It's not out there. And one of the main reasons for us doing it is because we simply believed, if it's closed, then we only sitting in the circles with the same people, that knew each other from before, innovation won't happen.
Yep.
And trust me, it costs the foundation millions in lawyers and education to our stakeholders, how to run validator nodes, what's the risk implied, and all this stuff. Everything that is kind of easy if you are completely in anonymous space, like in ethereum and so forth, and all the completely permissionless blockchains, that is done by individuals. Doing this on corporate level is extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. Until today, there is it's very difficult to find which large corporate actually has tokens on their balance sheet.
So this is going to be full transparency. We're going to see exactly, actually we can see right now, exactly, who is holding, what they're doing. So you guys, if you do want to check out the Validator dashboard, the link is in the description. And like Ed was saying, any other blockchain out there, especially if it's a, proof of authority blockchain, most of the validators are crypto companies. This is actually corporates, outside of cryptocurrency. One of the first times it's ever happened.
Definitely. And just to call out to anyone in the community, give us feedback. This is our first launch of this publicly visible system, and we want to make it better. So it's going to continue to evolve, but we're really excited about it.
I'm excited too. Now, I'm excited about this next question, actually, because I've been waiting for this for a long time. So could you guys talk about the coming Polkadot relay chain and how staking is going to be involved with it?
Definitely. Ed, you should start. And I'll kick it off with just this one anecdote. 2016, Ed, Anna, myself, some others from the founding team of Energy Web in a dreary conference room in San Francisco with Gavin at the front of the stage with some of the US's biggest utilities there. And this was 2016. He wasn't talking about Bitcoin. He wasn't talking about Ethereum. He went full Polkadot, like full white paper had just come out. And he's just downloading to these corporates who were just like, what is going on? It was amazing. It was amazing. But Ed, you got the full background.
Yeah, so, Energy Web is a Web3 company, but we're moving in two worlds. We're moving in a world that is moving at snail speed energy, and then the other world,
crypto, it moves.
We live in dog years. In 1 month, it's like 7 months. So, what Energy Web is about to release was conceptualized already in 2016, 17. It just took so long for the energy market to come there. When you look at the first piece of technology that we utilized, which was proof of authority, and at that time, proof of authority was based on a Ethereum C++ client, As far as I remember, no, it was the Rust band. I don't recall exactly, but it was retired anyways afterwards. So those were actually funded by EnergyWeb at that time. And then what happened is that a lot of other proof of authority networks, they copied the technology because it was open source GPL3. And so, I'm happy, that also in the name of parity, we can claim that EnergyWeb was kind of the inventor, together with parity or proof authority, which is now used by Ronin, Binance Chain, POA chain, a lot of other chains that are out there that utilize the same tech. And so that's how it started. This chain, it was, we felt it from the beginning it would be enough for a specific amount of time. And so it was an interim step because it's fairly easy. It has all the challenges, that we had, corporates validating public chain, all the liabilities around it and so forth. But what also happened is not only kind of a lot of other kind of startups copied the tech for their own purposes, also a bunch of companies in the EnergyWeb consortium took the technology and made their own private chains. And it has its logic, it has its reason, because there is a lot of use cases where you don't need to put it on a public chain. It's and so in the corporate sphere, there is a bunch of use cases where it's enough to have 4 or 5 validators, and then they put the business logic inside, fire some hashes inside, and it's not necessary to make this chain public as well to other people, because it's only those companies using those hashes. And so if you look at this, there is a lot of chains started to develop in the consortium, but close, not tied to EnergyWeb. And then after a while, those kind of the operators of those chains, they started to think, well, I mean, we could actually use those hashes for something else, maybe for other use cases. And but to utilize them for other use cases, it would be interesting for them to connect them to other chains, like to EnergyWeb, to the EnergyWeb chain, and that's exactly where Polkadot comes inside. So the whole Polkadot infrastructure with the relay chain and parachain is just made for the corporate world, because there will be no regulator worldwide, energy regulator, that will allow its whole energy market, the identity system, to run on a chain where they can't foresee or kind of have an influence on the governance. It's just I just can't imagine. Let's say that the Brazilian market is running on a chain where the Chinese government has a say in it. So it just won't happen. And so, the Polkadot infrastructure with relay and parachain allows just that. Everyone can keep their governance. Everyone can upgrade their own chain, but they all share the same layer of trust. The relay chain is just the minimum layer of trust. And then, of course, with the cross-communication protocol, they can exchange all of that between each other and utilize all the information for further, more interesting use cases. And so we actually presented this at the first Web3 Summit, and looking at, because at that time, Polkadot was still in development, talking to Gav, when would Polkadot be so far that we could actually put it on this chain. The original plan was that EnergyWeb actually becomes a para-relay chain. So Polkadot has also its bandwidth limitation, which is it can only have 100 parachains right now. And the only way to scale it further to make the current principle of relay and parachain a fractal. And so, and which can be repeated. And so, the only way for scaling to have more parachains is the ability to create para-relay chains. And so, and then each para-relay chain can have, again, 100 children, and so forth, and so forth. And so, we initially thought, that EnergyWeb at one point in time would become a para-relay chain. And And then we saw all the development in the corporate world of all the private chains, and just like, no, the world is there now. We need this technology right now. And so after a lot of discussions, we decided, okay, we will kick off with a complete sovereign relay chain, essentially a copy of Polkadot. And then we'll see further down the road how the development happens in Polkadot, and how both worlds maybe join in. So the thing here is going down that path even allowed us to do some adjustments in the token economics. So we can look at this event that's going to happen hopefully by the end of this year, but Jesse can tell more. It's essentially a new chain. So the old one will continue because a lot of stuff happened there already. We need to have it. We need to have the history. And having a new chain enables us to create new token economics. Because when we started EnergyWeb, the most advanced token economics we had at that time, or let's say monetary policy, was the benchmark of Ethereum. And now, that wasn't any, there was no magic in there, so there was no big science in there. And so we just copied it actually from Ethereum, with the difference that we limited it. We limited the token supply. Looking at the last 5 years, what happened in in development and token economics, monetary policy, worlds have changed. There is so much more, and you could also see how Jesse and his team, they applied this in the EnergyWeb 1.0 chain, which is the burn and the staking and all the other stuff that happened, and now with the new chain we can apply the most advanced token economics out there. This is something that I'm very excited about because Jess is leading the research group together with Parity there. And so there's really some interesting things happening, which I'm very excited to witness.
Yeah. So I think just to paint like an even more detailed picture of what Ed's talking about, I think I'd love to offer kind of a description of what's going to happen on the tech and solution side. And then I'll talk token economics, just like Ed was mentioning. And we, as the foundation in our community, will be putting out some more communications on this soon, but we can start talking about it now, which is super exciting because we've definitely been in stealth mode.
Hey, that means you guys are getting some first of its kind information.
These are the Glengarry leads.
Indeed. So I'll just talk about the tech for a second. So for folks that have been in EnergyWeb for a while, we have this thing. It's our technology stack. It's called the decentralized operating system. And the whole point of that was to basically create all these components that those businesses could use to stitch together their own applications. And all those applications and services are powered by EnergyWeb tokens. So that's been our model to date. The big thing that we've learned is that what these companies actually want are something that looks closer to a product. They're willing to use Web3 tech. They're willing to use public blockchains. We use these decentralized identifiers, which is this decentralized standard for identity, which is key to our whole tech stack. But they kind of want them packaged. Yeah. So the transition we're going through as an organization and community is basically less about this decentralized operating system and more about what'll be shown soon. We really have three core solutions. You, Tyler, and others have seen these three solutions and covered them at length. So we've got Switchboard. This is our solution just for dealing with identities. We've got a second one that's going to come out really soon called Green Proofs. Green Proofs is all about some of the things you've seen with Shell and with some of these other companies that are just trying to trace things going on in the energy sector, whether it's 24/7 matched renewable energy, green Bitcoin, which we can talk about later. That's this green proof thing. And then the third one is what we're using in Australia and what we're trying to use in California. It's called a decentralized data hub. So we don't need to spend a ton of time on exactly those solutions, but that's what we're going to be focused on as an organization and community bringing to market. Now let's convert that to this new relay chain, what Ed was talking about. The way we're going to roll out those solutions is that there will be this new standalone EnergyWeb consortia relay chain that we're building with Parity. That chain, we'll talk about the token economics in a moment. It's likely to be proof of stake, so not proof of authority. We'll speak about who those validators are. But basically, if you picture that relay chain, and then I just described 3 different solutions, our vision is for dozens of those solutions to be running underneath and connected to that consortia relay chain. So in Polkadot speak, right, or in Kusama speak, you've got the relay chain and all of the different parachains underneath it of the different crypto communities. In our speak, we're going to have the Energy Web Consortia relay chain with dozens of different solutions running underneath them. Now, some of those solutions will be the things that we're doing in Australia. There might be 2 separate solutions running there. It might be a global solution to support electric vehicle charging. But basically, that's what we're moving towards, is every single application that we build, so every single one of these solutions, has an application-specific blockchain powering it behind the scenes. So that's, without even talking tokens, like that's the new architecture. And the reason it's interesting is Ed nailed it. It's about governance. So again, I'm sitting here in California. We built something with the California ISO last year, and we're trying to do some more work with them this year. Do they want to govern that thing with people in the Netherlands or people in Singapore? No. So the governance benefits are huge. And the other thing that we're doing, although probably won't spend a lot of time on this conversation, Substrate as a technology from the Parity team is incredibly powerful. And so every single one of these solutions that we're bringing to life, we're actually embedding useful work into the protocol itself. So, basically in some of these different use cases, instead of keeping stuff off chain, so specific work to be performed in an application, we're jamming it into the protocol. So in Australia, for example, where we'll have one of these solutions with dozens of different companies in Australia running validator nodes on that local blockchain, that blockchain is going to be performing work specific to that market, which is really interesting because like most of the enterprise blockchain stuff that Ed was mentioning, they're doing most stuff off chain. They're not actually using blockchain protocols and consensus to do much useful work. So that's super, super exciting. So to connect it all together, I'll just, on the token front, because this is like
that's
really,
what I was
really
going to get to. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So the primary reason that businesses running these individual solutions connected to the relay chain, the primary design characteristic for that entire setup is actually about security. And if you're a Polkadot or Kusama person or holder, that language should make sense. Because in those ecosystems, what are those relay chains doing? They're providing security for all of the blockchains that are connected to them. And it's shared security. So as that ecosystem grows, every solution underneath it grows. So we're doing the same thing. But there's a key addition in our ecosystem that's really important to underline before I talk about the token. Every single solution is not just having the relay chain validate the blockchain behind it. It's also performing a second check on the identities. So for anyone following Energy Web, they should know that our entire stack basically assigns digital identities to people, to organizations, and to assets. And those identities are all over the world. What our relay chain is going to do is not just check that the blockchains are secured and the blocks are being produced. They're also going to be performing a global authentication check about what's happening with those identities. Can they be trusted? Are the verifiable credentials associated with them legitimate? So our relay chain is going to be performing an additional security function besides what the Polkadot and Kusama relay chains do. And that's where the token comes in. So basically, here's how it's going to look. That staking token at the top of the consortia relay chain, it's going to be Energy Web token. So we're not creating a new kind of token to replace EWT or anything like that. So Energy Web token is going to be over here on the mainnet Energy Web chain for now, but that's going to be the token that's used to participate in the governance and to power these relay chain. So if you're going to be a validator up there, you're going to have to stake a lot of Energy Web tokens. But the real interesting stuff happens at the solution level. So if I'm the way the simple token economics works is if I'm a real world enterprise and I want to buy one of these solutions that I've described. So I want to go buy one of them. In, again, Kusama or Polkadot speak, this would be, I'm going to go lease a parachain slot, right? That's how it works over there with these crowd loans. In our sense, we're creating an environment where companies can pay fiat, and that fiat revenue gets flipped into something that looks like a stable coin on the consortia relay chain. That stablecoin flows from the company who's paying for one of these solutions into the relay chain. And then this is where it gets super interesting, and we're doing something that I don't think I've ever seen in another crypto project. That payment that flows into the relay chain is split. Part of the payment just gets paid out as an award to the validators on that relay chain because they're performing this service. Makes sense. The other part of that payment is going to be used to automatically acquire energy web tokens off of public exchanges and stake them to the relay chain.
Nice.
So, and that to me is incredibly interesting because we're creating a direct channel from enterprise adoption of this Web3 stack that flows straight into the validators, but also the token. And there's a very strong business reason for that. The more tokens are staked into that relay chain off of the open market, the more secure that relay chain is, and by extension, the more secure every solution and every identity that's using it.
So this is just going to be like a self-reinforcing loop. You know, the more these projects expand, you know, they grow, the more stable coins that are bought, the more energy web that comes off the open market and is taken away.
You got it.
I mean, this is, you know, if you want to look for another analogy of this is what was really hard to swallow for a lot of corporates was flexible gas fees on Ethereum, or you know, if you can't predict how much this transaction costs, you know, you can't, you know, give out a fixed price to, you know, retail or and so forth, and so and DAI actually, you know, also a proof authority chain, was actually a copy also of Energy Web, the DAI chain. But they, you know, as a token, they use DAI, you know, that was a very convenient solution because you paid in stable, you know, in fiat tokens. You know? And so it essentially goes into this direction. Another thing that is very convenient in the corporate world is how to actually get a parachain, you know. So right now, you know, as startups are doing it right now, so that basically there is a crowd loan infrastructure, which is, you know, very interesting in the innovation space for startups. But and you know, startups that can't afford kind of the whole slot, you know, they can give an incentive for Dota Kusama holders to participate, you know, in the auction, and then, you know, to bond them in. And you know, in the corporate world, you know, I don't see any corporate kicking out a corporate token, you know, to incentivize someone to participate in the crowd loan. So that won't happen, at least not in the next 5 to 10 years. So the thing that we are doing with Parity, or Jesse's team is doing with Parity, is we're also working on a solution how a corporate can actually onboard into a parachain in a cloud environment. On Azure or whatsoever, yeah? And that will also give a massive loop back to Parity and Kusama, so that more corporates can onboard in Kusama or Parity. In Polkadot.
I mean, imagine if these solutions I described, a corporate could go into an Azure marketplace or a Google Cloud marketplace and as close to single click deploy a node on one of these solutions as possible. And all of the fiat to stablecoin to energy web token conversion that I described automatically happens in the background. That's the kind of setup we're trying to get to. Because as Ed said, you know, we were really excited about this prospect of corporates going out, buying energy web tokens and using them to power applications. What we've learned is they really need to participate in fiat because that's how their procurement departments work. So with this kind of setup, it just works. We go from fiat to this, basically it looks and feels like a stable coin on the relay chain, and then that is automatically distributed to all the stakeholders that are providing services to maintain the integrity of the relay chain and all the solutions under it.
Awesome.
And on the staking side, you know, something that also excites me a lot is obviously a bunch of the validators, you know, large corporates or, you know, startups from the energy space, and of course, they won't be available to fill the whole slot themselves, you know, the minimum requirements themselves. And so it will be open to any nominator, basically, exactly like in the Kusama Polkadot space, to nominate a specific validator. And so I'm very excited to see, you know, with grid singularity becomes a validator who helps us becoming.
Yeah.
I'll help you. I'll help you. So that means, some of us out there will be able to participate, and stake with some of these larger entities, correct?
That's the idea. I mean, the staking requirements at this relay chain level, because they're going to be performing not just block validation service, but literally protecting all of the identities around the world that, again, step into the real world out of crypto. These are, my battery, my solar system, my electric vehicle that is being used to balance the grid. So those relay chain validators are going to have pretty large amount of staked tokens. So exactly the idea is delegate it. So they can basically bring in other token holders into their node in order to hit those thresholds.
Do you have any idea of the threshold yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Specific. And the other piece that is, frankly, from my perspective, even more interesting and has the bigger impact on token economics is, what does it cost to acquire one of those solutions, right? How much in Kusama and Polkadot, you have the auctions that determines the price for how much it costs to go and acquire them. So in our world, a big exercise we're going through is, in addition to figuring out that staking threshold, figuring out what do enterprises need to pay in order to access these different solutions. And the primary idea we're designing around is not an auction, not a fixed cost, but value-based. So for example, what if one of these solutions is just focused on making it easier to charge electric vehicles anywhere in the world? What if the cost for that solution siphoned a 0.5% fee off of every single charge that took place on that platform? In that sense, the solution kind of pays for itself. And as that market grows, the basically payments flowing through that solution into the relay chain and the Energy Web token grows over time. So those are the two things we're really playing through. And that's why I don't have an answer yet, is staking threshold and then the pricing of these individual solutions.
So another question I have regarding that, what about if I have enough? Could I nominate myself to become a validator node?
Maybe into this topic, if it just, so look, we started, when Energy Web started, it brought a lot of people from the energy market together to think how this technology, could solve a lot of the problems we have out there. And so it was a lot of people that know the energy market, of which there isn't many, to be honest, because it's a very small market. This is not very inclusive market, and so our goal was to make it inclusive, to introduce open source, to introduce a new culture into this whole market, and if you have followed Energy Web, then you have seen that Energy Web slowly opened up more and more and more and more. At first it was internal working groups, and then Energy Web started to publish more and more. And then we also started adopting, new staking mechanisms and so forth as the market on the crypto side was evolving. Now, one thing that I'm super excited about, regardless how we will kick off the relay chain, is we will probably adopt an on-chain governance system exactly as it is in Kusama Polkadot. And that will be very, very crucial for further evolution of the chain, where questions like you just asked, where can come from the outside, meaning the pressure, the desire of the ecosystem can be expressed in on-chain votes, and the token holders can vote on it, and then immediately upgrade as well, forkless, which is, for now, the governance in Energy Web was calls. There was formal calls happening, with people coming in and calls like this. If we can automate that, we can update faster. It becomes the whole governance process becomes completely open, and then literally the best idea wins.
Just to underline that, right? So the governance of this new chain is to be determined. And I think it is definitely going to go in the direction Ed described. The proof of authority validators on the existing Energy Web chain will continue to maintain that. But in terms of this relay chain, it's a new governance setup. And so from my perspective, that relay chain, to your question, Tyler, I think it should be as decentralized as possible, because the more nodes you have out there that are as distributed, the more secure the network's going to be. The only thing, the reason I'm not jumping up and down and saying yes to your specific question is, we may suggest, again, it'll be a governance decision at the end of the day, but we may suggest some additional credentials be required to be collected by some of these validator nodes. So, and they might not even have to do with traditional KYC type checks, but more about security. So, for example, node operator, have you acquired X cybersecurity credential given by this third party over here? So that's actually how, and again, it's more of an it's not very interesting for like a straight crypto crowd, but if we're trying to get enterprises to adopt this stuff,
you need security. You need security across everywhere.
Exactly. So TBD, but indeed, from my perspective, because we're enabling local governance of every single one of these solutions, there's an incredibly strong business reason why we should be pretty aggressively decentralizing that relay chain.
Awesome. Because I think I could get a lot of EWT tokens. I think I have a pretty large community. But now I want to talk about some of the projects you guys are talking about coming out on, some of the parachains. So one I've been taking a look at, you guys just recently released information on it, is Project Symphony with AMO, the Australian energy market operator. So could you explain what's going on with that?
Definitely. And I'll actually try and connect it to the relay chain architecture, because that is what we're going to be migrating to over time. So basically 2 projects in Australia, the new one called Symphony and another one called Edge. Here's an example where one of those solutions I described at the beginning of the call, the decentralized data hub, we're basically spinning up 2 of those in Australia. So one is in Eastern Australia, that's Project Edge. Another is in Western Australia, because it's actually a different energy market. That's Project Symphony. So the Project Symphony, very similar to what we're doing in Edge. It's all about enabling customers who have Tesla Powerwalls, cars, flexible heat pumps, any of these kinds of devices, and making it easy for them to participate in the Western Australian energy market. So that's the focus of the project here. And if you want to connect it to the relay chain, so right now, basically there'd be 2 solutions running in Australia, Edge and Symphony, each with their own decentralized data hub and each with their own governance around it. Because again, different market in Western Australia and Eastern Australia. And then the really cool thing is it may make sense for those 2 to merge over time, because there is a connection between those 2 energy markets. And because of how these chains can message to each other, that kind of merger would be very easy for us to pull off technically. So we're super excited about it. And the Australian projects are really the tip of the spear for everything that we're doing around the world, because there's just so much stuff on the ground. There's so much solar. They're getting over 50% of their grid's power from renewables pretty much every day. So that is the future. And that's why we're so focused there, so we can bring the rest of the world along eventually.
Nice. So talking about the rest of the world, what's the status of the project in California with the California ISO? What's going on with that?
So if you're in California and you register on this Flex Alert system, which is what they use to basically get all of us in California, I'm sitting here outside the Bay Area, they basically ask us to use less power because in the fall, it gets really hot and there's not enough power on the grid to keep the lights on. So they basically ask us to use less electricity. Not the most sophisticated system, but we're working with what we got. That software powering that entire thing is running on the Energy Web stack as we speak. So if you go in and register, you get a decentralized identifier. It's a self-sovereign identity. You can populate that by basically saying, here's my zip code. Here's my indication of willingness to be able to participate in that program. So that's live now. What we're trying to do, though, is to do exactly what we're doing in Australia in California. So myself, my team are pounding the pavement and doing nothing but pitching the biggest other 3 utilities in California to try and bring to life another decentralized data hub, so one of the Energy Web solutions, specifically for California. So that's our focus. It's been great to work with the California ISO, biggest utility in the state, and now our objective is to get all of the other utilities on board with a much broader transformation of the state's energy market. Okay,
well, so across America, there are, main regional, energy markets, and then a lot of them are run by ISOs, independent system operators. Do you have any other projects going on in the United States with any of these?
So you very, very perfect observation. Those are our primary customers.
Okay.
So all of those companies. And actually, if you zoom out and look at the rest of the world, there's not that many of them. There's a few hundred ISOs that we need to get onto the Energy Web stack. Those are our target customers. Yeah. And in the US, we're basically in active conversation with all of them on any given month. We're just relentlessly trying to get them on board. Specifically, PJM. So this is, I think, either the biggest or second biggest one of the ones that you mentioned in the US. They've been a long time EnergyWeb partner and customer. And indeed, that's exactly what we're trying to get off the ground. Can we give them a decentralized data hub? Same thing we're talking about in California. Same thing we're talking about in Australia, to basically transform the way those assets participate in the market. As soon as we have a yes on that, the community will be the first to know, but we're working as hard as we can in the US for sure. And the same would go for the other markets. Texas, depending on what happens there with ERCOT, that's an incredibly ripe target for what we're doing. But yes, every ISO in the US, and we're most advanced in California and with PJM.
So another question, kind of related to that. So is this more like getting them on board and then, that whole region gets on board, or is it on a state level,
It could be both. Unfortunately, there's not an easy answer because the energy markets are confusing, like Ed was talking
Convoluted,
about.
yeah.
But in general, groups like PJM and the California ISO are very powerful initial advocates. Same with AMO. And then once they're on board, they can pull in the other utilities in that region to be a part of the shared digital infrastructure. They're the key actor for sure.
Okay.
So in many, in other countries, the classical kind of hacking order in the energy market is the Ministry of Energy, the regulator, and then the ISO, and then the distribution, the DSO, which is a local network distribution, and then the rest, the traders, generation, retail, and so forth. And the rules are usually created by the independent system operator and the DSO, and these two entities are heavily regulated in all the markets. So they only allow to have a specific margin and so forth. It must be very transparent because they fulfill a national service. That's why they're regulated entities. That's why, if you can help this entity solve its problems, which is distributing and transporting the grid, and these companies become more efficient through the technology that we have, you change the whole market. That's why it's for EnergyWeb. This is the primary client.
There is another go-to-market too, and I shouldn't discount these smaller players, right? Especially in crypto where everybody can participate in these communities. Just yesterday, there was a piece in Cointelegraph about Stedin, which is one of these distribution utilities in the Netherlands.
Yep.
So that application is a switchboard application. It's a Internet of Things cybersecurity play. So they're using our stack to make their network more secure, just like we were talking about with the relay chain. In that case, the ISO isn't involved at all. But that distribution utility, which has something like 1 million customers, they just see value in using our stack for a local application. So it can come from both directions for sure. But if you really want to go for the whale, it's great to kind of go from the top down and try and get them all on at the same time.
Okay. So I kind of want to move on to the crypto climate accord and the green Bitcoin. So any major developments in that arena? What's going on with that?
Definitely. I can say a little bit about this, but I'd encourage everybody to, a little bit. Yeah. I would encourage everybody to keep a close eye on our comms because there's some really exciting work going on in this space. Our primary focus with the Crypto Climate Accord has shifted away from just bringing in as many people as possible to sign these net zero pledges and much more aggressively towards Bitcoin. And even more specifically, not necessarily, you've probably seen fewer announcements about us tokenizing renewables or carbon offsets for the sake of tokenizing. Frankly speaking, this is a bit of a side note. There is a lot of questionable activity going on in the general market right now. When you see announcements about companies tokenizing carbon offsets, be careful because there's a lot of, it's almost like that early ICO wave in 2017. I remember with Ed and I, there were 200 companies claiming to use blockchain to solve everything in the energy sector. There's a little bit of that going on right now. So user beware with some of these projects out there talking about tokenizing renewables. What we're doing with Bitcoin in particular is developing some certification criteria that basically will use our stack to help Bitcoin miners prove whether or not they're actually renewable. That's our focus. And that uses green proofs, one of our solutions I talked about earlier. Because the problem right now is Bitcoin miners, they'll put out a nice PDF that says, hey, we're 50% renewable. Prove it.
Yeah,
and they
prove
can't.
it. They can't.
So
No.
we're helping them with that. It all uses the Energy Web stack. It's going to use the token economics I described earlier with the consortia relay chain. And we are working with some very critical partners in the financial ecosystem to bring this to life. And we'll be able to come public in this in the next several weeks. And I'm really excited about it. Really excited.
I'm excited too. Could you maybe drop maybe some of the miners, or, Bitcoin mining entities you may be working with?
I'd take a look at the Crypto Climate Accord page and look at the signatories. Those are the primary ecosystem that we're drawing from for this Bitcoin certification piece.
Okay. So another question, are you only working with United States Bitcoin miners, or is this a global effort?
Global effort. Well, really good question. Global effort. Interestingly, most of the public Bitcoin miners are stateside, and they're the ones that are really moving fast on sustainability and stuff like that. But the design of our solution is global. So if you're a Bitcoin miner in Kazakhstan or in Ed's backyard, we want them to be able to be a part of this certification scheme, just like folks here in the US.
Okay, nice. So talking about green proofs, so I just, Twitter, some guy hinted at this from one of your blogs. Do you have another green proof platform for aviation fuel? And what's going on with that, if so?
Wow, this is a very detailed Twitter question.
Yes.
That's awesome. What can I say about aviation fuel? We are very actively involved in the sustainable aviation fuel space as Energy Web Foundation. As we bring this green proof platform to life, which again, to be clear, we're applying to all different supply chains. Sustainable aviation fuel is at the top of the list for the requirements that we're building around. So we are active in that space for sure. And that's about all I can say at this moment in time.
Okay. Well, I'm doing some digging, so there may be a video coming. Watch out, viewers of the tube. So I want to talk about another project that could become, a parachain. Expand upon the proof of concept you guys have been going on. Sorry about that. So could you expand on the proof of concept that you have going on with Shell?
Yes, awesome. So Shell is one of the first 10 companies that jumped on with Energy Web that Ed said back in 2016. We've done a lot of different projects with them, built a lot of different applications. This 24/7 one is super interesting, and you nailed it, Tyler. This is exactly why we want to bring to life these different things that look and feel like parachains. So that solution is a 24/7 renewable energy matching solution. So basically, a lot of companies around the world, they're buying renewables. They want to know exactly where those renewables are coming from, and they want the supply of those renewables to match perfectly with their demand. Google is really into this. Microsoft is really into this. A lot of other big corporates. So companies like Shell are figuring out how can they bring to market a product that has that matching capability within it. That's what we're building. And actually, we're building that with many more companies than Shell in the Energy Web ecosystem, and every single one of them will have a green proof platform.
Oh,
so that's the way to think about it. So again, you got this relay chain, right? Our vision is, Shell might have one or multiple of those 24/7 ones. We're still figuring out the architecture, as will other enterprises that want to bring to market this 24/7 matching solution.
Oh, wow. So we could have some more news coming regarding this, and people are using it.
Definitely. Yep.
Awesome.
You can expect to see it. Yes.
Awesome. So a lot of people, NFTs, they say NFTs are going to change every industry out there. NFTs aren't just for artwork anymore. So is Energy Web planning on using NFTs within their platform? And if so, how?
Ed, I'd be keen to get your input on this one, but I'll give kind of my 2 cents. We were using NFTs way before it was cool. I mean, back in 2016, 2017. The thing is, the difference in our world is that the value associated with an NFT typically has nothing to do with the NFT. So for example, we would create an NFT for a wind turbine that is connected to a digital identity. Where does that wind turbine make money? In the real world by selling into an energy market, right? The value doesn't flow back to that NFT. So that's the difference. Whereas with art or with gaming or in the metaverse, that NFT, the thing itself is what's valuable and can be traded, right? In our world, frankly speaking, the energy companies aren't there yet. They don't care about NFTs. They care about just making money. So we use it as a piece of technology, but that's why you don't see any huge NFT platforms for, wind turbines or solar panels or that kind of stuff in our world. Ed, I don't know what you think.
No, I was thinking exactly about the same. NFTs for us was the ERC 721 and the standards.
Yeah,
we used this from the beginning. That was the first use case for Origin.
totally.
Certificates of origin. So it's just not as sexy as a monkey or something, right? But it has a purpose, right? It has the purpose of tracking electricity. And I think we will see way more NFTs, and we actually at Singularity also working on an NFT, but definitely again differently as you would think about it, not in the form of art, but something else.
I mean, a specific example: these green-proof platforms. Let's go back to sustainable aviation fuel. If we bring forth a green-proof platform that focused on sustainable aviation fuel, so this is fuel for planes that doesn't come from oil but comes from things like plants. We will likely use NFTs, and basically each energy company that's producing fuel will produce NFTs representing a unit of sustainable aviation fuel. Is the value going to be that NFT, or is it going to be the real world unit of fuel that's being traded on an exchange? I actually don't know, but we use them all the time.
Oh, awesome. So regarding, you guys talk about gaming, with NFTs. This is a question I'm pulling out of left field. Is there any plan to bring some sort of gamification into the energy web ecosystem?
In terms of the metaverse and a lot of the activity going on in that space, I do know that we have had companies approach us who are interested in building gaming applications on Energy Web Stack because we're in this energy transition sustainability space. We're not pushing that directly from the foundation. We've certainly had conversations to that effect, and I'm not sure. I don't have any updates I can drop here, but I think it's super interesting.
Any word from you, Ed?
Ed's smiling. Maybe he knows something.
I mean, what is a game? Usually games are simulations, right? And just go on our homepage.
Just go on whose homepage? Grid Singularities?
We've been working on simulations for quite a while. We made some games. One of the first games that we did was 1.5 years ago, where we had this quite interesting hackathon running where we had a bunch of data scientists and grid operator, and they were controlling kind of the new market designs through all the APIs, and we had policymakers, regulators, all witnessing that at the same time. And that was for me, it was one of the most interesting things that happened in the last years, where we could see like how the future could really work. Was this new market design, and it was really like a game. People were so excited. Because I must admit, it was a very nerdy game, but for us, it was super exciting. Yeah. So we're definitely thinking how to expand this game and to a much wider audience. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for that. I love games, and I'm sure people out there would like to, be able to take the Energy Web Stack and, build energy communities, in a simulation first as a game, and transfer that into the real world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So my next question is about the stablecoin. So there is this stablecoin and interest-free loan platform coming out called, is it Bonk or is it BonkQ? Or I
believe it's Bonk.
Bonk. Okay, I had it right the first time. So could you guys give us insights into this?
I can speak a little bit about it, just and I think I was on Twitter just the other day because I think it's really interesting. So Misha, who is our former Chief Technology Officer and Chief Innovation Officer at EnergyWeb, has moved on to serve as CTO at Bonk. And I think actually in the near future, he and I are going to do a session together, kind of talking in more detail. And it's definitely their project. So I'm a little bit removed from it and I can't speak to the detail. Here's what I can say. with the new consortium relay chain setup I described, we need stable coins of all different currencies, and we probably need different flavors. We need stable coins that are backed by crypto, and we also need stable coins that are backed by fiat, just given the nature of the companies that are coming into this ecosystem. And so with the Bonk approach, I think it's super interesting to basically bring this stable coin-like asset onto the Energy Web stack that will be close to the euro, just to make it easier to pull off all of the crazy token economics I talked about earlier in this interview. So yeah, I mean, that's the long story short. We need stable coins on the Energy Web stack, and we're going to need a variety of them. So it's awesome to see what Bonk's bringing to market, and we're excited to be one of the first communities that they're focused on, alongside, I believe, Alliance Block.
Yep. Yeah, so I did some digging into Bonk, and I did a video, actually. They said at launch they're going to have 13 tokens. So I was like, yeah, that's what they said. I was like, what, 13 tokens? So I was like, okay, you can have stable coins for different places, but one of them has to be a governance token. And I've been seeing some hints from people, proof of snapshot. So is an airdrop coming for EWT holders?
Okay. So I can certainly talk about the snapshots. The point of the snapshots is all about incenting people to stake Energy Web tokens for the long haul in anticipation of the relay chain. And so basically, with the snapshots, here's the simplest way to think about it. The longer you stake Energy Web tokens continuously, so not like removing them, restaking them, removing them, restaking them, that is going to be what determines the award that is given out for participants on the relay chain. That's the purpose that the snapshots are playing right now.
Right now. So there's a possibility, because I mean, I'm wondering how they're governance. There's got to be a governance token. I'm wondering how this governance token is going to get released to the community.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, you too. All right.
You know what I'd love to see in Energy Web, and you don't see this in kind of corporate consortia. It's Energy Web is following a very similar path as we have witnessed it in Ethereum. Ethereum, there was a group of 60 people that built this thing, and then as Ethereum launched, it was about to fall apart. A lot of people left and opened their own startups and so forth. And majority of the people, that were building Ethereum, as in the founding team, they continued building applications on top of it. And, and I love seeing the same at Energy Web. Energy Web had already so many spin-offs, where teams that worked with Energy Web, spin off and started to build their own application on Energy Web and so forth. And that is very exciting to see, because that's how you want the space to flourish.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. So now we're going to get into a little bit more information where Ed comes from. So Grid Singularity and the Grid Singularity Energy Exchange, formerly the D3A, how is this going to fit into the scope of things with the Energy Web?
Yeah, so to give a bit context to this, of all the workshops we had, one workshop stuck to my task force. There was the first task force meeting that happened right a few months after we launched Energy Web. Was the first 10, 11 members. It was in Windsor in UK, and we had a palette of use cases. And that's where kind of the first task groups, came together around specific use cases. And they were all kind of grouped after lowest hanging fruit, highest hanging fruit, And the lowest hanging fruit was certificates of origin. And then a couple in between. And then the most difficult was new energy market design. And at that time, for us was clear, this will probably I wonder if I'm going to see this new energy market design in my lifetime, because I've been working in energy now for 20 years, and it's very, very slow. The last really big reformation we saw in 2000. And so the energy market design that we need in many countries that would enable a 100% renewable world needs to be of similar impact as what happened in 2000 in Europe. And so it felt like very compelling. It's like I'm not sure if anyone is going to go into this direction to do this deep research, and that's why I was like, okay. Then we started to build a small research team around it. And while at the beginning, the first 3 years, Jesse and me and Anna and Ave, we were running, we were building up Energy Web together. But then at one point in time, we decided to change the overall structure, and so of Energy Web, to professionalize it, to make it more efficient. And so we decided kind of to split the teams, so half of Grid Singularity went into Energy Web, same on the Rocky Mountain Institute side and so forth, and Grid Singularity focused directly on this, on the new market design, which is really kind of, from a startup perspective, I'm investing. I have invested into a bunch of startups myself. I'm sitting on the board of a few companies, and usually you kind of give the advice, make the first MVP, start to make money, and then roll from there. Like, we're not doing a very wise job here, because we're taking a very, very difficult task was this market design. And so we started it as a research. We got funded by a bunch of public programs, and so we did the first version, first proof of concepts. Then we did a second version, which was D3A, which was for researchers. And so we had a lot of researchers using it, with whom we at the end made this simulation, this game. And then at this game, we got the confidence, okay, it works. And then we shifted our heads. How do we go into market now? And so what Grid Singularity essentially is, it's an exchange. It's a set of exchanges. It's a grid-aware exchanges, which means that the exchanges can be placed according to grid infrastructure. And not only that, the most interesting stuff actually is it's not like normal exchanges where you don't know the counterpart who's trading with you and so forth, where you don't even know what you're buying. It's an attribute-based exchange, meaning you could fire inside bids and asks with attributes like location, identity, and so forth. In practical terms, it means I could choose with who I trade at any time, where I trade, what I trade. And that is in scale of kind of user stories that could enable is as big as the change you have seen from the Siemens, S35 phone to the iPhone. And so where energy essentially can become a form of communication. Imagine you go to, we have Easter now, and so there is, maybe a party in the kindergarten. I could energize it and just send energy over, provable. And so where this market design comes in at the whole, if we look now at the whole stack where Energy Web is, this thing can only work. Regulation has to open up further. Regulation goes into this direction, but at a very slow speed, at different speeds in different markets. Another stack that we are dependent on is everything that Energy Web is building. The switchboard. So the lowest, the most important stack kind of is the identity. The identity and decentralized data access management. And this is is paramount for Grid Singularity, that Grid Singularity can work. And why? Is because through this stack, any consumer can just change as fast as they want. They can access any type of market, and because the whole complexity of the energy market is solved by the switchboard. So, and now imagine you have the identities, then you come the exchanges, and once you have provable identities and provable data, authenticated data, and provable authenticated trading and delivery settlement, then the box of Pandora is open, because then you can plug in the whole DeFi stuff on top of it. So that's where we fit inside. Again, we knew we were too early, and that gave us the opportunity to do a deep research, and we made all the stuff we do, we made public. And now on our exchange, on the simulation, we have over 2,000 researchers doing different simulations all over the world. We had proof of concept from Colombia to Australia to Thailand, literally in in many, many countries. And you can actually see, if you go on the map, you can actually see them there. And I'm very excited. I think by the end of this year, we should have something in our hands where we actually go into real market. Not at the full capacity as we wish it, but at the capacity as the regulation allows us. And another thing that we need for it is, we need a parachain slot. So, why do you think I'm calling Jesse, every second week? Jesse, how far are you? I need a parachain slot. I need Energy Web 2.0.
Awesome. Well, so viewers, if you want to check out that simulation map from Grid Singularity, it's also in the description. And people at home, actually, they can participate in this and they can create their own simulations. You guys have tutorials online on your YouTube channel of how to do this, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Everything is open source. There is a wiki. There is a description. If you're a community, if you're an energy community, and call us. There is an open Slack. We are open to talk with all communities and get your feedback, build a solution for you.
So there aren't any live communities as of right now based on this, correct?
So there is live communities running, which we call canary networks, but they're not commercially live because of regulatory. It's not yet legal. So, and there is a big differentiator if you look at energy communities. And there is, of course, a lot of energy communities there, but we're talking about the ultimate choice in freedom in trading. Okay? Not a collective consumption, which you can run under VPP or under a virtual power plant. This is also called community, energy community. And so this is what we're talking about. We're talking about degrees of freedom in trading. And there is not a single life out there. If somebody talks about, yes, we can do peer-to-peer trading and show me anything out there, there is maybe one, which is, where the energy is allocated by an Excel file. And not even sure if that is legal. So that is the maximum rate of innovation that we see now. For this, you don't need an exchange. It's simply an allocation, which is probably even done by a DSO.
Okay. So question, when do you see community energy markets like this happening? Which country do you see it happening first? When is it coming to the US? Which state will be first?
Yeah, some of the most advanced markets we see in communities is definitely Austria. All the European governments, they push into this direction by the EU Green Deal. And but each country has its own kind of speed in opening up the regulation. Spain is also very progressive, but still, not allowing the degree of freedom that we would wish it. To be honest, I'm not very. So we have a project running in US, in New York, but this is also it's a research project. So we don't have any timelines there when this can become actually legal in operation.
Okay. So if you had to, just take a wild guess, which U.S. state do you see doing it first?
New York?
Either New
York or California.
Oh, really? Nice.
I
don't know, but Jesse knows much better. I don't.
In California, we have energy communities. They're just called something different. It's these community choice aggregators. Yeah. So I'm actually part of the biggest one in the state in the Monterey Bay area. There's Sonoma County Clean Power. There's one in Oakland. There's others in the state. The trick is, and Ed's totally right, when I get my bill from my energy community, it's super simple. It's like, you use this much energy, don't worry, it came from solar. So what they could transition to is exactly what Ed's describing. So basically a market where I've got solar on my roof and I could actually sell it to other people in my community. I think the primary reason that's not happening yet is these energy communities are really new. And they're run by people not versed in software. Let's just put it that way, right? These are utilities where city council people usually had to become the executives of an electric utility for 500,000 people. So they're getting their feet wet. They're trying to figure out how to manage all this stuff, and they are advancing. I'd put my money on California to your question.
Cali, baby. So could I make my own energy community in Chico?
Politically, yeah. There's a political process for that to happen. I was helping some friends that live up in the Lake Tahoe area after the fires that happened last summer. There are communities up there that are like, hey, we want our own energy community so that we can try and create a renewable microgrid to island us off from the rest of the state when these huge fires happen. So there's definitely a political process in California for entire communities to basically defect from the existing utilities and form their own communities.
Well, I'm actually, Chico is right next to Paradise, that town that all the way burned down. I mean, there's an opportunity there.
Jesse, what about in California? How does it work? So the CCAs, they need to be geographically co-located?
It's a little bit wonky. There needs to be physical distribution lines that are in the same area. So I think Central California, Chico would be fine. And then it's a local government decision. So basically local governments have to come together and there's a formal process to go through to get it across the finish line. But I mean, the numbers are huge. Don't quote me on this, but I think in PG&E, so they're one of the biggest of the three utilities in the state, they forecasted that half of their total customers are going to be going to CCAs by 2030.
Oh, wow.
So it's a huge movement.
Yeah. I'm going to have to look into that. You said it's up to local governments. Looks like Chico's going to have to get on the board. Chico, California. City Council. I'm running. 2022, baby. Vote for Chico. No. Okay, guys. So my final question I have for you is, what do you see happening to Energy Web in the next year? You know, by end of 2023, we'll say. And how about the next 5 years?
I'm happy to start. By the end of 2023, I, as someone who's been working on this since 2017 or 2016, I really want to prove what we're trying to do with this relay chain, which is a complete coming together of impact, meaning companies using our software to get more renewables online, and crypto. Because with this new model, the more companies that are using these application-specific blockchains in different places around the world, we are forging a real no BS connection between dollars in the real world and crypto with this new token economic setup. I want to prove that. Yeah, I want to bring these solutions online, as many as possible by the end of 2023, to just show that it works. I mean, like Ed said, this isn't the fastest sector in the world, but I do think in that time frame, we can definitely get a number of these companies using these solutions at scale to prove this impact model that truly brings together crypto and enterprise adoption of these technologies. In 5 years, I really hope that, but just speaking as the CEO of the foundation, Ed said it, a lot of these crypto communities decentralize over time for the better. I think it'd be awesome if the foundation itself saw dozens more startups and initiatives like Bonk and like others in the ecosystem, so that the foundation is playing less of a central role in this whole ecosystem, and it is being jointly powered and governed by all of the token holders and by more and more communities. So that's my real hope, is the foundation is playing less of a central role in helping to orchestrate all of the adoption of this technology.
Okay, what about you, Ed?
I'm pretty much backing that. You know, when you just ask this question, I think like it's like 5 years into the future. I can imagine that. How did it feel 5 years back? You know, 5 years back we did the first Event Horizon in Vienna, and you know, it felt incredibly crazy at that time. You know, people were laughing because the vision was so big. You know, of what could be possible. And knowing the energy market, having worked there. It's like, you know, the chance that this could, you know, happen was very, very, very small. You know, now looking where we are right now, and maybe by the end of the year, by beginning of the next year, we will hopefully witness the establishment of country chains, of solution chains, you know, of different application chains, and then in 5 years into the future, the communication between those chains from DeFi perspective. Well, I can say, like, you know, I'm already super proud of what the team has done. You know, that you know, also thinking of Event Horizon 17 or 18, this event that we organized, we had 200 startups at that time. There was only 4 left, and so I'm super proud of the team, and so just, you know, keep a cool head, go through all the crypto cycles, just keep on building, I think the arguments we have are just simply better than anything out there. Open versus closed, secure, distributed versus central. And over time, we will win. And we have the firepower, and we will do it.
Yeah, no, I kind of see it as a snowball effect. Once the solutions are online, 1 year down the road into 2023, the solutions are being seen by other companies. It's just going to snowball. And then 5 years down the road, I can see this changing the world. That's why this is one of my favorite cryptocurrency projects out there. And I talk about it so much is because I do see this project literally changing the world.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your support, Tyler.
Of course.
Yes, really, man. Thank you.
Of course. It's a pleasure to have you guys on and do this deep dive. I've been wanting to do it for a long freaking time. And for the next one, I don't know how we're going to make it happen, but we got to do it in person.
Yes, please.
Berlin or Lisbon.
Yeah, Lisbon. Yeah, dude. That sounds good to me. Because, in-person interviews are on a whole nother level because my editor can do even more amazing things.
That's good.
Excellent.
Awesome, you guys. Well, again, I thank you guys for being on the channel, and I'm sure the viewers of the tube have appreciated this conversation. There's been a lot of alpha and breadcrumbs dropped, and we'll be having you on soon, hopefully in person.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one.
Bye.